Love's for beginners, ain't no winners. It slips through your fingers, I ain't telling no lies. So F all the drama, F the karma. Just do what you wanna, promise you got time. Be you and keep looking forward. Don't you look backwards and you'll be fine. Come through and say what you need to. Don't let them put you down. Baby, let me tell you what it feels like. Being independent, no trouble inside. It's like magic, living like a bad bitch. 'Cause baby, you deserve the best in life. Let me tell you what it feels like. Being old mama, yeah, treat yourself right. It's like magic, living like a bad bitch. 'Cause baby, you deserve the best in life. Come get your future, know you wanna. She'll never betray ya, she ain't telling no lies. So break the glass ceiling, find your meaning, make truth out of dreaming, yeah. Baby, let me tell you what it feels like. Being independent, no trouble inside. It's like magic, living like a bad bitch. 'Cause baby, you deserve the best in life. Let me tell you what it feels like. Being old mama, yeah, treat yourself right. It's like magic, living like a bad bitch. 'Cause baby, you deserve the best in life. Be you and keep looking forward. Don't you look backwards and you'll be fine. Come through and say what you need to. Don't let them put you down. Baby, let me tell you what it feels like. Being independent, no trouble inside. It's like magic, living like a bad bitch. 'Cause baby, you deserve the best in life. Let me tell you what it feels like. Being old mama, yeah, treat yourself right. It's like magic, living like a bad bitch. 'Cause baby, you deserve the best in life.
And we've got some breaking news on that book by Prince Harry, Spare, as it's called. It is the UK's fastest selling non-fiction book on record, we are hearing. And it's sold figures of 400,000 copies so far. That's across hardback, ebook, audio formats. On its first day of publication, 400,000 copies have been sold. The Transworld Penguin Random House, the publisher, said, quote, "We always knew this book would fly, but it is exceeding even our most bullish expectations. As far as we know, the only books to have sold more in their first day are those starring the other Harry, i.e. Harry Potter. But according to the latest data we have, it is the fastest UK selling non-fiction book on record. And Harry was paid $20 million for that book, we are told. So the publishers are getting a bit of their money back already.
Did he not sound like he was literally in pain when he was reading that out. Cry more, cry more. Cry more, British tabloid press. Cry more. They have been coping for the last 24 hours. But yes, and actually, I now have an update for you just as I was coming live on air. Sorry, I don't have it on the screen, but I'm going to read it out. Omid tweeted, English language edition of Spare, the memoir of Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, sells more than 1.4 million copies on its first day of publication. Penguin Random House announced today the English edition of Spare, the memoir by Prince Harry, sold more than 1,430,000 copies, so units, in all formats and editions in the United States, Canada, and the UK on the first day of publication. So this is just United States, Canada, and the UK. And I actually saw somebody from France tweet that of the they had 200,000 copies that were printed, the French edition, and they're now having to print an additional 50,000 copies. So we haven't even got the global figures yet. The first full day of sales, Spare represents the largest first day sales for any non-fiction book ever published by Random House, the world's largest trade publisher. A global news event, Spare was published in 16 languages worldwide. The book was released simultaneously in print and digital prints in North America by Random House, in Canada and the United Kingdom. The announced first US printing of Spare was 2 million copies. Well, they're going to have to print some more. The book has now gone back to press for additional copies to meet demand. And you know something? I really want to know, for the British press, the tabloid British press, on what planet was Diana's son, heir of the British Empire, not going to be a bestseller? I haven't actually gone back and looked for the sales of Diana's book, Andrew Morton. I'm pretty sure, obviously, Harry has outsold his mum, but I'm pretty sure even the sales for that were pretty darn high. I can imagine at that time it would have been flying off the shelves, in the UK especially. Really, on what planet was this not going to be a bestseller? But it has been. And shops around the world have been stacking up those copies. Really nice display here in Waterstones in the UK. Here it is on the Amazon bestsellers now. Automatic Habits by James Clear has actually sold, I think, almost 10 million copies. It's a very popular book. I haven't read it, but in the self-help circles, it's very popular. So I definitely think that Harry is going to reach those type of numbers. And we're only 24 hours out. Incredible. Right. Get your comments before we get started. By the way, I still haven't finished listening even to part one. I'm actually working on a book myself at the moment. So it's very difficult to concentrate and keep an eye on the news and read Harry's book as well. So I think I'm only on chapter 27. So I'm actually not going to do any reviewing of the book today. Because what I've been doing is I've been screenshotting different parts and I want to go through them. So no actual reviewing of the book from me today, I'm afraid. But we will talk about some other things that have come up. And of course, Harry on Colbert. Gail Lewis, you have finished listening to the entire book. Amazing. I love the fact that millions of people will be reading it and figuring out the UK media madness for themselves. Yes. Rose Hudson, why is Harry now saying his family are not racist? Are the racist? Okay. Do you know what? Hello to everyone, and thank you to the mods, and hit that subscribe button and thumbs up. Now that we've done the hellos, I'm just going to get into this straight away because I just want to get it out of the way. Facts and 2 cents, I think, wrapped up what I felt about this. So I'm going to read out what Petal wrote. Sorry, just give me a sec because now my computer is freezing. Right, she said, racism is racism whether you are conscious of it or not. The damage it does to the person on the receiving end doesn't diminish because someone is unconscious of it. Unconscious bias only benefits the racist person. It absolves them from guilt and gives them plausible deniability. Having said that, we all have blind spots. We all have said hurtful things to others, not realizing how it would impact on them. And Harry is right. When it is pointed out, then we need to apologize, go educate ourselves so we don't repeat the behavior. I'm happy that we are having these discussions. I hope this is a path to more openness and people from all cultures can have conversations and learn about each other, our differences, cultures, and perspectives. So I think from Harry's perspective, he probably feels that the comments were unnecessary, but not necessarily a product of racism, rather unconscious bias. Which, to be fair, to everybody else who is now confused, perhaps that should have been made a little bit more clear in the Oprah interview. But like Petal said, racism is racism, and it's one thing to talk about, how do you think kids will look when you've got a mixed race couple, but to be concerned about the baby's skin color, I think maybe that's Harry's blind spot. Um, I think also the issue with this is that the royal family are not normal people. They're the royal family. They are a family who have all of their luxuries and privilege off the back of others, off the back of black and brown people. They are the family that resides over the Commonwealth. So one has to ask why, given all of that, why that, despite the fact that the whole of the rest of the world, to be fair, we still have issues with racism, but if you're going to look at the wider picture, right, generally speaking, the world has moved on. So why is it that this institution, with its history, has also not moved with the world? Why is it that there are people within this institution that still have that quote unquote unconscious bias while residing over the Commonwealth that is majority black and brown people? And that is where I would push back a little bit on Harry regarding his comments. But unlike Harry's family, it would appear, he is actually doing the work and he continues to do the work. His family, on the other hand, I have not seen that they are willing to do that work. They, for the most part, are happy to use black and brown people as props, but not actually talk to them on an equal footing or do anything that's impactful for their communities. So while I don't expect Harry to throw his family under the bus, I will still push back on his comments because I think we need to be careful that we don't kind of slip into letting people off for things when they say things that are still hurtful, because everybody felt those comments. When Meghan said there was concern about how the baby's skin color, how dark the baby's skin would be, everybody felt that. But yeah, that's what I have to say about that. And I'd be interested to read your comments as well. Sonia, I am disciplining myself to wait for the weekend, then I'll have a marathon read. Well, to be honest, so much has come out, but I'm still discovering little things that the tabloids haven't talked about. They have not talked about that passage about Andrew. I will read that out. Oh, thank you, Church Nelly, for posting the link for Harry on Colbert. Yes, please go and watch it. Get the views up. Get the views up, please. First time posting. Hey, thank you for posting. Thank you for being here. I wonder how much William at 24 hours listener. I think if you ask most people who bought Harry's book, they probably didn't even know that William had a book, for real. Rahini. Oh, Anne, is the book about the squaddies? No, the book is not about the squaddies. The book is actually a sequel to my travel book, Passport Ready. So my first travel book was about solo female travel. My second travel book is going to be about digital nomadism and remote work. So it's a sequel to Passport Ready. To where is it? I think some of you have bought the book. Let me just find. I got a picture. Yes, it's a sequel to this. But I think that somebody should write a book about the squad. I think they should. Unconscious bias is racism light. Yes, Valerie. That's a good way of putting it. Lightside, you said because they refuse to do the work to address the internal issues they undoubtedly have. These types see their biases, prejudices as non-issues because they are elite above everyone else. Yes. I mean, they look down on their own, on the working class in their own country. So we should never really expect a day when they look highly upon black and brown people. Yes, Phoebe, the royals in Norway and the Netherlands are trying to address the issue in a constructive way. They're doing a much better job of it than the Windsors. And Harry said he's still in the learning process too. Yes. I mean, he went to Eton, for goodness sake. That is a whole boyhood of conditioning that you are above all and everyone else. So to be honest, the fact that we're even here with Harry having these conversations, the fact that we're here with an heir of the British Empire having these conversations, I'll take what we're getting because you never thought you'd see this progress for real. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Now that we've got that out of the way, yeah, no one is happier about all of this in the British government, distracting from all of the issues. We've got 100,000 civil servants who go on a 24-hour strike in February, walk out the largest strike for years. So for those of you in the UK, please make sure to check and see if any of this is going to affect you in any way. And over at the Daily Fail, I want you to look at these three stories. You've got BBC allows Shamiam Begum. I don't know if that's, sorry if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. This was the young girl that was coaxed into going to Syria, telling her story in a 10-part podcast. You've got a British mother, 33, dies in her sleep on the morning of her wedding. Then you've got in the middle story there, Taylor at the center of Meghan and Kate's bridesmaid's dress row speaks out. Look at the number of views for each story. 11.4 viewing now for the Shamimam story. 28k viewing now for the British mother story. 158.7k for the story about Meghan and Kate and the bridesmaid dresses. Y'all, the UK is ill. UK is ill, y'all. Like, what is going on? What is going on here? Because how can you have literally 10 times the number of views for a story about bridesmaids dresses? They're obsessed. This is obsession. And you're obsessing over this while there's strikes. Don't know what to say. Chosen to be his. And do you think that text Harry received on the docuseries was about that interview and maybe the reason Harry sort of cowered down? Not quite sure what you mean about the interview. Oh, about the Oprah interview. Oh, do you think that the text was about what was said about Archie's skin color? Maybe. From Meghan's reaction though, I'm not sure. The way Meghan reacted, it seemed like he was saying something like threatening, or it wasn't like, "Oh, how could you say that because you made me look racist?" It was honestly, the way her face looked, I wouldn't be surprised if it said, "I'm gonna kill you." That was the expression on Meghan's face. Valerie, he said, wow, that's a huge strike. The New York nurses are only striking from 2 hospitals, and that is 7,000 people. Yeah, massive strike. And it's across public services. So it's not just nurses, it's other things as well. Official Lauren Brown, priorities appear not to be aligned correctly. Hope this changes, but I'm not hopeful. For real. Losing the plot here. Anyway, on to the next thing. Keep on through. Oh yes, this. So this was actually the front homepage of the Daily Fowl at lunchtime. Lunchtime when you've got that's usually the height of traffic because people stop to read. So you had Kate, who was magically photographed, never photographed, but here she is, plain faced, stony. I don't know, maybe she's meant to be looking sad, but she looks very stony. We never get a picture like this, but all of a sudden, the day after Harry's book goes on sale, now we suddenly have a picture. Continuing to prove Harry's point. This was clearly posed and staged. And then below that, you've got three different articles about Harry's book. Obsession doesn't even begin to describe what's going on here. And then this was quite interesting. So Harry revealed in his book that Meghan told a joke at the Trooping of the Colour, and that it fell flat and people didn't seem to take to the joke. I always knew that something had happened this day. Meghan's body language told you everything. And Kate's as well. Kate just looked salty as the salt next to pepper, she did. And Meghan just seemed like, you can see her kind of like pulling away. She just doesn't have that sparkle that she, usually does when you see her in a good mood. There was clearly something that happened that day, and I could tell. And I guess now we know why. This was also, if you've seen the video, when they were in the carriages and they were going through the procession, Kate's carriage went, Camilla's carriage went, and there was pretty much silence. Meghan's carriage went, and the crowd erupted. And for sure, that would have made the other royals jealous. And because it was just so audible. So I knew something went down that day. Some positive news, positive for us, not for the tabloids. Reach to cut 200 jobs after a slump in Christmas and Black Friday ad revenues. Reach, which owns the Mirror and the Express, hopes to save 30 million in cost-cutting drive. Reach said this was due to lower than anticipated spending on ad campaigns in the run-up to Black Friday and Christmas, the continued impact of macroeconomic and consumer uncertainty reflecting in slowing market demand for advertising. And the Lord said, Amen. Daily Mirror, by the way, Piss Moron used to be the head editor of the Daily Mirror. Right. Oh God, onto this. My. I'm not going to play the video because it had a song on it and I don't want to get done for copyright. There was some crazy woman who printed, I don't believe these are actually copies of Spare. I believe that she printed or photocopied the cover. So she must have at least bought one cover or printed it out. I don't know. But she photocopied numerous cover photos of Spare and plastered them on other books and was burning them. Now, what you don't see in these pictures is the caption that she wrote. She wrote, "How to solve the winter fuel crisis." You are literally paying 4 or 5 times on gas prices. Can you imagine if you live on a fixed income and then inflation on food and everything else? And you think that burning fake copies of Harry's book is going to solve the winter fuel crisis. The derangement is just unreal. Who does this? And then to film it and put it online while this is going on. Like, girl, this is what you should be worried about. The Prime Minister cutting NHS services left, right, and centre while having private healthcare. Health Secretary telling exhausted nurses to work harder to justify the pay rise. I tell you, as somebody who has family that works in the NHS and sees how hard they work, saw how hard they worked during the pandemic, this is so insulting. And you've got crazy people like this burning Harry's books. What do you even say to this? Are you not embarrassed? This is really embarrassing. Also, more derangement. The Mumsnet founder, Justine Roberts, said that our users are deranged when it comes to Meghan. Mumsnet is a very popular website here in the UK. It's basically Reddit for British women, British mothers. And here's their founder saying that their users are deranged. I guess they wished their husbands would help more with the nappies. But I don't know what a group of mums are doing talking about Meghan. And then you also had Petronella, Miss Petronella over here, friend of Camilla, defending her on Good Morning Britain, bringing out the side chicks to defend the side chicks. A reminder that this is the woman who had an affair with Bojo while he was married. And she was out here talking about how lovely Camilla is and how Camilla couldn't be scheming, gaslighting the whole of the United Kingdom like we don't know what happened during the Diana years. Girl, please. Also, honourable mention for Dan Wooten. Well, Harry didn't quite mention him. Well, he didn't say his name, but he does get a mention in Spare. Harry says in Spare, why him? Why, of all people, the showbiz guy? That's what he refers to him as. Because lately he'd refashioned himself into some sort of quasi-royal correspondent, largely on the strength of his secret relationship with one particular close friend of Willie's, Commons Secretary, who fed him trivial and mostly fake gossip. I believe that he's talking about Callum. I've forgotten his second name, but there was some guy named Callum who was friends with Dan Wooten and Jason Knopf. I love that Harry doesn't actually use his name, but we still know who he's talking about, because if Dan Wooten comes out, and I don't think he has so far, and talks about this, well, then he has to admit that he's the sad little man that Harry is talking about. And we know how irritated Dan Wooten is by the Sussex squad.
The Sussex squad. The Sussex squad. The Sussex squad. The Sussex squad. The Sussex.
Cry more, please. Cry more. We're not going anywhere. Right. Last thing before we get on to the Colbert show. Harry went there. Harry went there with Andrew. I'm not on this part of the book yet, but Harry says, Meghan asked me one night, you don't think they'd ever pull our security, do you? Never. Not in this climate of hate, and not after what happened to my mother. Also, not in the wake of my uncle Andrew. He was embroiled in a shameful scandal, accused of the assault of a young woman, and no one had so much as suggested that he lose his security. Whatever grievances people had against us, S crimes weren't on the list. Harry, my man, respect. I'm so glad he mentioned this. And I don't think that he had to mention this because neither Harry or Meghan are responsible for Andrew's actions, but he did mention it, and respect to him for that. Right, I'll take your comments before we get on to the next part of the podcast. Novi, you remember the cheer when Meghan's carriage went by? Yeah. It was very audible, wasn't it? Yeah, this is some very melodramatic behavior. Complete derangement. Julia, deranged people with no life, they never got the memo entitled Love Wins Over Hate Always. Yes. Oh, Lauren, that person chose to waste resources to print that photo. She's too obsessed to really be as dumb as burning. Yeah. Oh, ridiculous. Elder, the wonderful ovation that Harry received on Stephen must have gagged the palace. Yes, they were literally cheering his name. They were like, Harry, Harry, when he came out. Yes, light side, you can always count on the internet to show the not so bright bulbs in the box. Adrian, the curiosity is killing them. All that said, they're not buying the book, not reading the book. They were all lying. Yes, they were all lying. It was all a lie.
It was all a lie. Guys, it was all a lie. She lied. It was all a lie. Guys, it was all a lie. She lied. It was all a lie. Guys, it was all a lie. She lied.
We know that the haters are the biggest fans. I didn't even know how many pages Harry's book was. I found that out from a hater account. They are Harry and Meghan's biggest fans. They showed up for the podcast. They showed up for all of the internet Zooms, during lockdown. And now here they are lining up for that book. Oh, and the Netflix documentary is number 1 again for yet another week in the top 10. Or not number 1, but it's in the top 10 again. So it's still in the top 10. Church Nelly, Harry was always more popular than the other royals except for the Queen. Yes. But with the youngins, Harry's always been the more popular one. Right. On to Harry's appearance on Stephen Colbert. It was a very nice appearance. There were some serious moments, but also some very light-hearted, funny moments. Harry did speak about the way that the tabloid press spun his, talking about Afghanistan. And he said that, what he said wasn't dangerous, the way they spun it was dangerous. And he also said the reason he spoke about it was because he wanted to help troops who have been through that experience talk more openly about that experience because of the rates of suicides. And I actually saw this article that said in 1 year at the height of the Afghan war, more British soldiers took their own lives than were killed by the Taliban. Richard, who spent weeks on the front line, investigates why are so many of our heroes committing suicide. So the proof's in the pudding. Harry had his reasons for saying it, and he feels as someone who is involved in helping military veterans and Invictus Games, that this is perhaps a way of helping soldiers. I don't personally know if I was advising Harry, if I would have worded it in that way, because while the information has been out there, I don't know. This is just me personally. I feel like I would have written it a different way, if I'm honest. but this is how Harry feels that he wants to speak about the topic, and you know, he has the right to speak about it however he wants to. But yeah, they spoke about that, and Harry cleared that up, and they spoke a lot about the importance of Harry being able to tell his own story so that people get context. They even joked about the Crown, and Stephen said, "Do you fact check the Crown when you watch the Crown?" And Harry said yes, and that's why it's important to tell your own story so that historically you have the right details. They also talked about when his pecker got frozen. And Stephen, this is when Harry went to the North Pole and he didn't wear a manhood cushion. I'm going to put it like that to protect the royal jewels. And he explained how his pecker got frozen. And Stephen has a really good way of bringing out the best in. I mean, listen, he's been doing this for years, but I felt like he really brought out the light side of Harry. And after the more serious side of the conversation, they really had some good laughs. They were doing shots. Um, they they talked briefly about um, Harry's experience as a royal, and oh gosh, I've completely lost my trail of thought. But anyway, they talked about it a lot. It was very funny. So definitely go and check it out. And also, a whole other group of people agreed that it was funny. A good 3.1 million group of people. The episode averaged 3.15 million total views, which is the most viewers on a weekend since former President Barack Obama appeared on the show in November 2020. Wow. It's also the largest audience that The Late Show has scored on any night since the Super Bowl special, which managed just under 5 million. Amazing. So people are interested, people are watching, and Harry's the man of the moment. And I'm happy that he is actually having his moment. Harry and Meghan are a great team, but it's also great when they have time to shine on their own. And I'm happy for Harry that he's having this moment to shine on his own. Also, there was a really funny segment with Tom Hanks, and somebody found that Diana had actually met Tom Hanks some years ago. The Daily Mail, always with their BS spin, they wrote this, that Harry was mocking royal tradition because they had the guys with the traditional royal garb. I mean, no sense of humor whatsoever. I actually thought the whole skit was very funny. And overall, I thought it brought out a very light side of Harry. Oh, yes, this is what slipped my mind. So they also talked about life in the US, and Harry said that he was very happy, that he loved California, and he said with a cheeky grin that America is a great country, and him and Stephen cheers to that. So that was really funny as well. I can't wait for the day that Harry sings the national anthem or is seen singing the national anthem. I think some people will have a heart attack. Legs, thank you so much for the super chat. You said, since Harry was more popular than the British royal family, does anyone think this is why Tampon didn't give him much money and why Baldy wanted to subjugate him? Yes. I saw a snippet of the book going around where they were talking about Harry's allowance. And one of the things that Harry touches upon is his clothes. Sometimes he would actually wear shoes until there were holes in it. He would buy clothes at discount stores. I mean, they were really. Harry was he was a prince who was in many ways still just living like a commoner. It's like he had all this privilege around him, going to the finest schools, going to the races, but when it really came down to it, the family, at least in secret, was paying him dust. And I think Harry just put on a good face. I mean, listen, nobody's saying that he grew up in abject poverty. Of course not. But it is not what you would expect of somebody who grew up a prince, because the whole royal, charade is that, Britain is such a wealthy, well-off country that we can afford all of this pomp and pageantry, and we have this royal family and they have butlers and this, that, and the third. Like it's part of the fairy tale that they do actually live in luxury. That is part of the fairy tale. But the reality wasn't quite matching what we've been told. Now, Lewis, she said, I felt in the book, Harry stated it honestly and clearly. Harry spoke to that out of um context dragging very effectively. Yes, indeed. Well, being you said it was a light-hearted interview with reach and serious content and content. Yeah, I thought it was a nice mix of serious and light-hearted as well. And it was a nice way of ending his book tour. Well, I don't know if it's ended, but in terms of the initial set of interviews, I haven't seen anything else announced. Yeah, Lewis, most people felt that it was the best interview of all the interviews that Harry did. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. I chosen to be his. Did I see the video of Harry meeting with people after the show? Oh no, I did not. I will go and check that out. LA, you said 1.2 million views on YouTube now from last night. Amazing. Or didn't the James Corden one? Hasn't that gotten like, God, I haven't even had a look. I think it was going 30, 40 million views or something. That got a lot of views. I'm sure this one will as well. Sylvia, Harry said his allowance was mainly for his military clothing. So sad. Oh, yes, Marie. Harry was Cinderfella. Like Disney are going to have to literally make a Cinderfella movie animation, right? I know everybody like jokes about Cinderfella, but they could literally now make a story about a prince who lived in a gilded cage who sometimes had to wear shoes until there were holes in them, and then got rescued by an American feminist actress and took him to safety. Oh, I'm sorry. And then a fairy godfather named Tyler Perry put them on a private jet and took them to safety, and they lived happily ever after in California, in the USA. Sounds like a modern fairy tale to me. Kids will love it. Well-being. He grew up in pageantry, fake lifestyle. Yeah, and it's a different kind of embarrassment, I think, when um everybody else believes that you live this incredible lifestyle, but really you don't, and you're forced to hide that. Valerie, he had money, but they would not let him use it. Harry didn't used to make the staff coffee. Get out. Oh yeah, no, he used to make the staff coffee, yeah. And that was one of the things that Megan put a stop to, right? When she came in. Julia, I love how the book resonated for Stephen. It was heartfelt and profound. Yes. And I'm so glad that they actually gave him a copy in advance for him to read before the interview, because it made the interview a lot more enjoyable. All right. I didn't have anything else to say except for I wanted to read out a very interesting thread that somebody posted. So let's have a read of this before we end the podcast. Right, this is from a Twitter user who said, I got my mother the audible version of Spare by Prince Harry for Christmas, and she finally had an opportunity to listen to it most of today. I asked for her impression tonight. Following are her insights. For those who don't know, my mother is a psychologist. She says she believes Harry is an empath. Empaths feel um, a lot. Bottling things up for empaths can have disastrous consequences for their emotional, psychological, and even change brain chemistry. Now, one of the things that Harry talks a lot about in his book is his memory and how parts of his memory are very on and off. And it became almost like a coping mechanism to block certain things out. So she goes on to say she applauds Harry for speaking up and encouraging him and encourages him to do so. Silence kills empaths. She believes Charles could have also been an empath, but his cold upbringing emotionally stunted his development at a very young age, making him very cynical. Though he feels probably as deeply as Harry, he doesn't know how to express it well or in the healthiest way. So one of the things that Harry actually says in his book also is that, for example, when they went on tour to Africa, Charles would write him letters, even though they were in the same, building. He would like write him letters that Harry would read, but he could never understand why his dad could never vocalize what he wrote in his very sweet letters. She goes on to say, I asked how Harry became so different from Charles. She believes Princess Diana's love and affection for Harry for the first 12 years of his life made a huge difference. Oh, I'm sure something that Catherine would know, being that she's an early years expert. Unlike Charles, Diana doted on Harry, giving him lots of hugs, smiles, affection, and letting him know he was deeply loved. Early years of love can have a lifetime of positive effect on a child, almost like a guiding light that the child can turn to in times of turmoil. Harry misbehaved in his teens and 20s, trying to forget and suppress that light his mother gave him because he wanted to suppress the pain. And this is something that Harry has said, not just in the book, but in interviews as well. He wanted to suppress his grief, but pain from grief and grief itself should never be suppressed. Like a volcano, it builds up where it is either channeled for good or for hate, or to cause pain to others. My mother believes Prince Harry truly didn't confront his grief until he had something greater to lose than himself, Meghan. In some ways, the despicable way the British press behaved early on to Meghan forced Harry to fully confront his past. What was it he was running from, and how would that affect his relationship with someone he really loved? My mother believes grief is loss of love that made you once whole. Harry recounts an incident where Meghan basically gave him an ultimatum for him to get help for his anger because she would not bring up a child in an environment of anger. Once Harry realized that he could lose the woman he saw himself spending the rest of his life with, he knew he had to confront his childhood self. Many of us have childhood selves we left behind because of pain, burden, grief, anger, trauma, or sadness. But, like a shadow, our traumatized childhood selves haunt us until we learn to admit why they tried to run away from it. Harry was traumatized by his mother's death. The coldness of the firm heightened the pain. They failed to confront him and kept others at arm's length for providing him comfort. In a matter of days, Harry went from having the mother who kept him whole to having his soul hollowed and kept cold. Meeting someone like Meghan, who showed him a lot of affection and made him feel like he was her world, probably brought back a lot of memories of his mother. Suddenly, Harry couldn't run away from his 12-year-old self anymore. He had to confront his grief. But my mother said, grief is not all sadness and pain. Grief can also remind one of happiness, a time of love. And that has been Harry's building light. He has it all the time. But he only viewed it in the negative. Remembering his mother also made him remember what true love should be. True love is not cold. True love is letting those you love know you love and care about them. It's giving them hugs, kisses, pets on the cheek, back, and encouragement, compassion, understanding, and lastly, forgiveness. My mother believes the coldness of the monarchy, i.e., the firm, during Charles's childhood, preventing him from maturing into a sympathetic and empathetic person. She believes it's why Charles and others are obsessed with teddy bears. Might explain it, Charles and Andrew. and carry them even in their adulthood. The bears are like a ghost of their childhood selves and a way for them to express love for themselves. But teddy bears are innate objects which disallows true growth. My mum believes Charles would have made a great person and perhaps even a good king if his emotional growth wasn't stunted with a lack of affection by his parents. What Prince Philip mistakenly saw as softness from child as a child was actually a boy who probably felt more than others. By failing to nurture that development, they prevented Charles from maturing into an empathetic person, a trait which is needed for one to be a good king of multicultural and diverse of a multicultural and diverse Commonwealth. In attempting to make Charles into their image, they may have doomed the crown due to his coldness. No lies detected. She ends by saying, "As for William, my mother thinks he is also stunted, but not like Charles. William was to believe he was better than everyone else. He's having difficulty reconciling the fact he's very much not better than others. Um, that only he can be seen as better than everyone else. His more charismatic brother and the brother's intelligent wife is to keep the crown at all costs. And that makes William dangerous." I thought that was such an excellent analysis, and I had to read it out. And thank you for that lady for taking the time to write all of that. And with that, I will end the podcast. Thank you so much, as always, everyone, for coming to listen. And wow, what an amazing, an amazing week it is turning out to be. Your son did good, Diana. Your son did good. Yeah, Judge Nelly, Tyler Perry's a very godfather. Uh, gosh. Oh gosh, the trolls are coming. Thank you so much, mods, for jumping on the trolls. Lightside said, "For real, they have all of the parts: the evil stepmother, betraying brother and sister-in-law, rescued by the smart, independent woman. Truly a modern day fairy tale." Adrian, if William was a fan of Suits, I'm thinking he was probably trying to get next to Meghan and pull her away from Harry. Yes, I keep hearing that this comes up in the book, but I'm not at that point yet. But my gosh, who would have thought, right? And you know the way the firm tends to project? Maybe all of those stories we saw about, oh, no, nobody even knew who Meghan was. Nobody knew who this Meghan Markle was. Maybe they were projecting because William and Kate did very much know who she was. They were a fan of Suits. Marina, you said Harry was phenomenal on Colbert. He's so intelligent, empathetic, and witty. Yeah, it was just a very fun interview to watch. Well-being and the memory issues come from our free state, a way of coping with difficult and overwhelming emotions. Yes. Yeah, I went through a very, very hard time many years ago. And it was so bad I actually did have to get counseling for depression. And there's a lot during that time that I just cannot remember at all for whatever reason. Like my memory just it's just blanked a lot out. And so I can definitely understand where Harry is coming from when he says that. Yeah, Tony, the whole family need therapy. I can tell you as someone who's gone through it, if you don't deal with your traumas, it comes up in your life in ways that you don't even fully understand. And that will stunt you. Just as an example, there was a girl that I worked with many years ago, and I noticed that she would, how do I put this? Like she would act almost like a little girl around other men in the office. Like, she would just act really girlish, and I couldn't understand it. I thought, maybe she just likes to be flirty in the office, and then as I got to know her, she opened up and she talked a lot about her childhood and her relationship with her father. And listen, I'm not saying that I'm a psychologist here, but there's got to have been some link between the way she acts with men in the office and her relationship with her dad. So if you don't deal with these things, you'll be surprised how they can come up, in other parts of your life, and you'll never even realize it. So please, don't be embarrassed to get therapy or seek different treatments and deal with these issues. There's no shame in it at all. Yeah, I thought that was a very excellent analysis. Oh, no problem, Valerie. Thank you so much for coming. You've all been great. Yeah, Mercy, John Oliver was right. I mean, he said it, right? Yeah, Maureen, therapy helps a lot. Yes, and also the damage it can cause to your loved ones. That was one of the things that happened to me, like, during that period. I would get so angry and irate, and I would snap. Even just sometimes, I was doing a full William. I never pushed anyone on a dog bowl, but I would just get angry very, very quickly. Um, and it was because I was suppressing so much of my grief. And if you don't deal with it in a healthy way, it will escalate to the point where you do lash out at someone physically, or you just get very angry over the smallest things, and it then begins to affect others around you. I mean, there was a time when, maybe I'll talk about it when I'm ready in another podcast in a bit more detail, but it got to the point where I didn't even really like who I was, and I think that was the point when I said I need help. And there's no shame in getting help. I think it's a lot more shameful to let um your anger carry on and to just become a worse person to the people around you. That's more shameful. There's no shame in getting help. And I encourage anyone listening to go and get help. Adrian, you said Harry did like me, watch The Crown and do research on subjects as if it were true. Yeah, I think we all did that. Sylvia Duchess, it's really weird how William and Kate watch Suits, but then met Meghan and they didn't get along with her. Oh, I think they're likely jealous. They couldn't believe it, right? I mean, how would you feel? I'd be shocked. But it's no excuse for the way that they ended up treating her. And I guess also because they had all these preconceived notions of, oh, she's a Hollywood actress. When she actually turned out to be somebody of great substance, that definitely made them feel a certain way. Right. Okay, Mercy, I'm going to give you the last word of the day. Cinderfella movie coming up. Tyler Perry, please make a movie. Yes, let's send that prayer out to the universe. Thank you as always, everyone. And there was actually a message on the Archwell website congratulating Harry. Congratulations to all of us also for pushing back against the false narratives. And what an amazing way to start the year. All right, I'll see you on tomorrow's podcast, everyone. Hopefully I would have read more of Spare by then. Ciao.
Love's for beginners, ain't no winners. It slips through your fingers. I ain't telling no lies. So F all the drama, F the karma. Just do what you wanna. Promise you got time. Be you and keep looking forward. Don't you look backwards and you'll be fine. Come through and say what you need to. Don't let them put you down. Baby, let me tell you what it feels like. Being independent, no trouble inside. It's like magic, living like a bad she'll never betray ya. She ain't telling no lies. So break the glass ceiling, find your meaning, make truth out of dreaming. Yeah. Baby, let me tell you what it feels like, being independent, no trouble inside. It's like magic, living like a bad bitch. But baby, you deserve the best in life. Let me tell you what it feels like, being no one's mama, yeah, treat yourself right. It's like magic, living like a bad bitch. But baby, you deserve the best in life. Be you and keep looking forward. Don't you look backwards and you'll be fine. Come through and say what you need to. Don't let them put you down. Baby, let me tell you what it feels like, being independent, no trouble inside. It's like magic, living like a bad bitch. But baby, you deserve the best in life. Let me tell you what it feels like, being no one's mama, yeah, treat yourself right. It's like magic, living like a bad bitch. But baby, you deserve the best in life.
And we've got some breaking news on that book by Prince Harry, Spare, as it's called. It is the UK's fastest selling non-fiction book on record, we are hearing. And it's sold figures of 400,000 copies so far. That's across hardback, ebook, audio formats. On its first day of publication, 400,000 copies have been sold. The Transworld Penguin Random House, the publisher, said, quote, "We always knew this book would fly, but it is exceeding even our most bullish expectations. As far as we know, the only books to have sold more in their first day are those starring the other Harry, i.e. Harry Potter. But according to the latest data we have, it is the fastest UK selling non-fiction book on record." And Harry was paid $20 million for that book, we are told. So the publishers are getting a bit of their money back already.